Whispers of the Forgotten Fair, the return of Hollow Creek Amusement Park. The town of Hollow Creek had long since forgotten the amusement park that once stood at its edge. The rusted remains of roller coasters jutted into the sky like skeletal fingers, and the old Ferris wheel loomed over the landscape, frozen in time. Hollow Creek Amusement Park had been abandoned for over 30 years after a series of gruesome deaths left the town in a state of perpetual unease. No one spoke of it anymore. The land was cursed, they said. But when ambitious entrepreneur Marcus Adler arrived in town with a dream of reviving the park, the whispers started again. "It's not safe," warned an old woman at the diner when Marcus announced his plans over breakfast. "That place took lives, and it ain't done taking." Marcus laughed it off. Superstitions wouldn't stop him from turning a profit. He had investors waiting, permits secured, and a team ready to begin restoration. Within a year, Hollow Creek Amusement Park would shine once more. Yet, on the first day of construction, the accidents began. The workers were uneasy from the start. As they cleared out debris, whispers echoed through the skeletal remains of the funhouse. A strong wind howled through the empty structures, carrying faint, childlike laughter. Then, the first injury occurred. A worker named Danny was on the Ferris wheel platform when he suddenly lost his balance. He fell 20 feet, breaking his leg in 3 places. "I swear," Danny gasped between cries of pain. "Someone pushed me." No one had been near him. The second accident was worse. Miguel, a welder, was restoring the bumper car pavilion when the power, supposedly disconnected for years, surged to life. Sparks flew, and a burst of electricity sent Miguel flying. His body convulsed as smoke rose from his clothes. He survived, barely. The crew muttered among themselves, but Marcus dismissed their fears. "Faulty wiring, bad luck," he insisted. "Nothing supernatural about it." Then the calliope began playing by itself. One evening, as Marcus inspected the progress alone, a melody drifted through the air. The calliope, rusted and broken, wheezed out an eerie tune. The notes were warped out of sync, yet unmistakably deliberate. Marcus turned pale. He stepped toward the carousel, the horses frozen in mid-gallop, their painted eyes dull and cracked. Then the music stopped. A whisper followed. "You shouldn't have come back." He spun around, but no one was there. His breath came fast, his pulse hammering in his ears. Just the wind, he told himself. But the moment he turned away, the laughter began, high-pitched, gleeful, and impossibly close. Marcus dove into the town's archives, desperate to prove to himself that the past was nothing more than history. But what he found chilled him. The amusement park hadn't just closed due to accidents. 32 years ago, a group of children had gone missing inside the funhouse. They had entered, laughing, running ahead of their parents. But they never came out. Despite extensive searches, no bodies were ever found, only their shoes scattered through the corridors. After that, people started seeing them. Small figures darting between the rides, heard their giggles at night. And then the deaths began. Marcus shut the file. His hands trembled. Was it possible? Were they still here? The calliope's melody returned, drifting through the night air. This time, the voices sang along. "Come play with us." Marcus tried to shake off the fear clinging to his spine. He was a businessman, not a believer in ghost stories. But as the days passed, the incidents escalated. One night, his lead foreman, Rick, stormed into his office, pale as death. "I'm done," he spat. "I don't care how much you're paying me. That place is haunted." Marcus scoffed. "What happened now?" "The wind whispered your name." Rick slammed his hard hat on the desk. "No, I saw them. The kids." Marcus froze. Rick ran a hand over his face, his breath shaky. "I was in the funhouse checking the supports. And then, the mirrors. I saw them. Reflections that weren't mine." He swallowed hard. "Their eyes were black, Marcus. Just pits of darkness. And they were smiling." Marcus forced a laugh. "You're seeing things. Then explain the footprints." Rick turned his phone toward Marcus, showing a photo. A dusty wooden floor, leading deeper into the funhouse. And on it, small, childlike footprints. Bare, fresh. Marcus clenched his jaw. A prank. Someone messing with us. Rick shook his head. I heard them whispering my name. They know we're here, Marcus. And they don't want us here. He walked out, slamming the door behind him. A week later, work continued, though half the crew had quit. That's when the Ferris wheel started moving on its own. It was a windless night, the machinery gutted, the controls untouched. Yet the wheel creaked to life, turning slow and steady. Marcus stood beneath it, watching in horror. Then, a light flickered on, one of the carts, glowing faintly in the dark. A figure sat inside. A small child. Marcus's breath caught. He took a step forward, trying to see its face. But the light flickered, and in that split second, the figure was gone. The wheel groaned to a halt. Marcus turned and ran. The next morning, the town sheriff showed up at the site. "Shut it down," he ordered. Marcus frowned. "You can't be serious. You don't get it, do you?" The sheriff's voice was low, urgent. "They don't want you here, and if you stay, you'll be next." Marcus crossed his arms. "Who? The ghosts?" The sheriff exhaled sharply. 32 years ago, my brother was one of those kids who vanished. And 2 years later, my father, he was the parks manager, was found dead in the funhouse. No wounds, no cause of death. Just gone. Marcus swallowed hard. "People don't survive long when they ignore the warnings," the sheriff said. "This place doesn't want to be rebuilt. It wants to be left alone." That night, Marcus decided to leave. But the park had other plans. Packing up his things, Marcus heard something. Music. That damn calliope. He clenched his fists. Enough! Storming outside, he marched toward the carousel, ready to tear the thing apart if he had to. But then, the world shifted. The air turned thick. The night around him stretched, twisting. And suddenly, the park was alive again. Lights blazed. Rides spun. The smell of popcorn filled the air. Children laughed. Marcus stumbled back. He turned toward the entrance, only to find the gates gone. The way out no longer existed. A giggle echoed behind him. He turned. The children stood there, watching, smiling, their eyes black voids. "You wanted to bring it back," they whispered. "So now you're part of it." The calliope screamed its tune, and the world swallowed Marcus whole. Months later, the park remained untouched. No investors came. No workers returned. The Ferris wheel stood still. But sometimes, late at night, people swore they saw it turning. And in one of the carts, a man sat frozen, his mouth open in a silent scream. And if you listen closely, just beneath the wind, you can still hear Marcus Adler begging to be let out. But no one ever does. Whispers of the Forgotten Fair, Part 2. The legend of Hollow Creek Amusement Park had faded over time, becoming nothing more than a ghost story told at parties or whispered in the back of classrooms. Most people in town avoided the place, but for a group of thrill-seeking teenagers, it was the perfect challenge. "Come on, guys, it's just an abandoned amusement park," Tyler grinned, shaking a flashlight in his hand. "What's the worst that could happen?" His best friend, Jake, scoffed. "Oh, I don't know, getting arrested? Breaking our legs falling through rotten wood." Emma, the bravest of the group, rolled her eyes. "Or getting eaten by ghosts?" Everyone laughed, but Maya, the quietest of them, shivered. "I don't think we should go. People say a lot of things," Tyler interrupted. "It's all just stories. Come on, Maya. It'll be fun." Maya hesitated, then sighed. If she didn't go, they'd never let her live it down. So, at midnight, armed with flashlights and a bolt cutter, they set out for Hollow Creek Amusement Park. The entrance gate loomed before them, rusted and covered in dead vines. A faded sign barely clung to the metal, its letters barely visible. "Welcome to Hollow Creek Amusement Park." Jake snapped a picture. "Dude, this is sick." Tyler clipped the chain with the bolt cutter, and the gate creaked open. A rush of cold air seeped out. The park was dead. The rides were skeletal remains, their structures dark against the night sky. The Ferris wheel stood still, a black outline against the stars. But the air felt wrong. Maya hugged her arms. "It's colder in here." Emma shrugged. "Old metal, open space. It's just in your head." They stepped inside, and the gate behind them slammed shut. "Okay, that was creepy," Jake muttered. "Wind, right?" "Sure," Emma said, though her voice wavered. They wandered deeper, past the crumbling ticket booths and the remains of a carousel. The painted horses were cracked. Their once bright colors faded into eerie grins. Then they heard it. A giggle. Maya froze. "Did you hear that?" Tyler forced a laugh. "It's probably an animal." But then they heard it again. Closer. A child's laughter. The flashlights flickered. The calliope music started playing. They ran. Emma led them toward the funhouse, its sign barely hanging by one chain. Inside, the air was stale. The floor creaked under their steps. Their reflections stretched in the cracked mirrors, twisting, warping. Maya gasped. "Guys, look!" Their reflections weren't moving. Tyler waved his hand. His reflection stood still, staring at him with empty eyes. Then it smiled. A whisper slid through the air. "Stay with us." The mirrors shattered. They ran, but the park had changed. The exit was gone. The rides weren't broken anymore. They were moving, glowing with lights that shouldn't work. Children's laughter echoed from every direction. A shadow darted between the bumper cars. Another stood by the cotton candy stand, watching. Jake tripped. "Help!" Tyler grabbed his arm and pulled him up. But when Jake looked back, his face went pale. I saw Marcus Adler," he whispered. Maya's heart pounded. "That's impossible." He disappeared. Jake swallowed hard. Not disappeared. Trapped. Something cold wrapped around Maya's ankle. She screamed as unseen hands yanked her toward the Ferris wheel. The others grabbed her, pulling her back. The wheel groaned to life, turning slowly. One of the carts lit up. Inside sat a man, frozen, mouth open in a silent scream. Marcus Adler. His eyes turned toward them, and he mouthed two words. "Run now." They ran toward the gate, but it was still closed. The shadows were closing in. Maya grabbed the lock, shaking it. "It won't open." Jake turned, eyes wild. "We're not getting out." Then, the calliope music stopped. A child's voice whispered, "Go!" The lock snapped open. They bolted through the gate. The moment they crossed, everything went silent. The lights flickered out. The park was dead again. Behind them, the Ferris wheel stood still. The cart that had been glowing was empty. The next morning, they returned with the police. The gate was rusted shut, untouched. The park was empty. No footprints. No signs they had ever been there. No Marcus Adler. But at night, if you listen closely, you can still hear the Ferris wheel creaking. And if you step too close to the gate, you might hear a whisper, "Come back and play." The next few days passed in a haze. None of them spoke about what had happened at the park. Not at school, not in texts, not even in whispers. But the nightmares came anyway. Maya dreamt of the Ferris wheel turning endlessly, the lights flickering, the shadows of small figures watching her from the darkness. Jake woke up in a cold sweat every night, hearing Marcus Adler's silent scream in his head. Emma stopped talking altogether, and Tyler started seeing things. It began with reflections, glimpses of the funhouse mirrors in the windows of his house, in puddles on the street. At first, he thought it was his imagination. But then, one night, he saw himself in the bathroom mirror. Only his reflection didn't move. It just stared. Then it grinned and whispered, "You never left." The mirror cracked. Maya noticed it first. They were sitting in her room, trying to pretend everything was normal, when she saw the bruise on Jake's wrist. "What's that?" she asked. Jake frowned, glancing down. The bruise was dark, almost black, shaped like small fingers, like a child's grip. Jake swallowed hard. "I don't know." But when Maya looked at her own wrist, she saw the same mark. And so did Tyler. And Emma. They weren't free. The park had left its mark on them. The news broke a week later. A girl from their school, Sophia Carter, had gone missing. Last seen near Hollow Creek Amusement Park. Maya's stomach twisted. She wasn't with us that night, Emma whispered, her voice hoarse. But she's there now, Jake muttered. They all knew what it meant. The park wasn't done, and it wanted more. They didn't want to go back, but they had no choice. Sophia was trapped just like Marcus Adler, and if they didn't try to save her, no one would. At midnight, they stood outside the rusted gate once more. This time it was already open, waiting. The Ferris wheel creaked in the distance. The calliope started playing, and the whispers returned. Welcome back. The gate stood open, like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. Tyler hesitated. Last time we barely got out. What if? We don't have a choice, Maya interrupted. Sophia is in there. No one argued. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped instantly. Their breath fogged in the air. The rides were still broken, rusted, but the lights flickered on one by one. The park was waking up. Then the gate slammed shut behind them. This time it wouldn't open. They were trapped. Again, they moved carefully, keeping close. The air was thick, humming with unseen energy. Shadows flickered between the rides. The calliope played a slow, warped tune, like something struggling to remember a song. Then, help me. They froze. The voice was faint, distant. A girl's voice. Sophia, Maya called. No response. Then, from the direction of the funhouse. Please, I'm in here. The mirrors. The funhouse was worse than before. The air was suffocating, thick with dust and something else. Something old. The mirrors were cracked, warped. Their reflections were wrong. They stepped forward cautiously. And then, Sophia's face appeared in one of the mirrors. Her eyes were wide, terrified. She pounded against the glass from the other side. Help me. I can't get out. Maya ran forward, pressing her hands against the glass. We're here. How do we get you out? Sophia's breath fogged up the mirror. She looked behind her, panic rising in her face. They're coming, she whispered. Then, her reflection wasn't hers anymore. Her face twisted. Her mouth stretched into a grin too wide. Her eyes turned black. You shouldn't have come back. The mirror shattered. The shards scattered, but Sophia was gone. Something moved behind them. They turned. The children were there. 12 of them. Silent. Watching. Their eyes were pits of darkness. One of them stepped forward. A boy, no older than 10, wearing old-fashioned suspenders. His skin was pale, almost gray. You don't belong here, he said. His voice was distant like an echo. Jake clenched his fists. Neither does Sophia. Where is she? The boy tilted his head. She's one of us now. Maya's heart pounded. No, we can still save her. The boy smiled. No one leaves. The funhouse shifted. The mirrors realigned, forming a tunnel leading deeper inside. The shadows closed in. They had no choice. They had no choice. The shadows pressed closer, forcing them toward the tunnel of mirrors. The glass shimmered like water, reflecting not their own faces, but twisted, distorted versions. Grinning when they weren't, moving when they stood still. Maya swallowed hard. We go together. No one splits up. Tyler nodded. Agreed. They stepped forward. The moment their feet touched the glass, the world shifted. The air turned thick, heavy, like moving through water. The park was still there, but wrong. The rides weren't rusted anymore. The Ferris wheel spun lazily, its lights glowing sickly yellow. The carousel turned, but the horses twitched as if alive, their eyes rolling wildly. And the sky, it wasn't a sky at all. It was a reflection of the park itself, upside down. We're inside the mirror, Jake whispered. Then, somewhere in the distance, a scream. Sophia. They ran toward the sound, weaving through impossible paths that seemed to shift the moment they passed. Finally, they found her. Sophia stood in the center of the bumper car arena, but she wasn't alone. The children surrounded her, pale, unmoving, their hollow eyes locked onto her trembling form. As the group approached, the boy in suspenders stepped forward again. You shouldn't be here, he said. Jake clenched his fists. Let her go. The boy smiled. You don't understand. She belongs to the park now. Just like you. Maya shook her head. No, we escaped once. We'll do it again. The boy's grin widened. You escaped because we let you. A cold weight settled in Maya's stomach. The boy tilted his head. But there's always a way out. Tyler narrowed his eyes. What do you want? The children whispered in unison, voices overlapping like a broken record. A trade. The boy pointed at them. One stays, the others leave. Emma's breath caught. That's not a choice. The boy shrugged. Then you all stay. The shadows twisted around them. The park groaned. The Ferris wheel turned faster. The music growing warped. Desperate. They were running out of time. Silence stretched between them. Then Tyler spoke. We leave Sophia, he said. Everyone turned to him in shock. She's already part of this place, he continued, voice cold. She's marked. If we don't make the deal, we all stay. Sophia's eyes widened. No, please, don't. Jake lunged at Tyler. You bastard. The boy in suspenders watched, amused. You must all agree. Maya's hands shook. There has to be another way. The shadows pressed closer. The air turned suffocating. They had seconds to decide. Jake clenched his jaw. I won't leave her. Emma nodded. Neither will I. Maya looked at Sophia, her friend, terrified and pleading. Then she turned to the boy. We're not making a deal, she said. The whispers turned to screams. The park raged, and the ground cracked beneath their feet. The ground cracked, splitting apart like shattered glass. The air howled with 100 voices, screaming in rage. The children's faces twisted, their hollow eyes burning with something ancient and hungry. Maya grabbed Sophia's hand. Run! They bolted, but the park was alive. The paths shifted, leading them in circles. The carousel horses reared up, their mouths stretching into grotesque grins. The Ferris wheel spun wildly, the carts swinging like pendulums, and the shadows chased them, clawing at their heels. Jake yelled as something cold grabbed his ankle. He kicked free, but his shoe was gone, sucked into the darkness. The boy in suspenders appeared ahead of them, blocking their path. You had your chance, he whispered. Then Maya saw it. A mirror. Tall, cracked, barely visible through the chaos. The exit. That's it, she shouted. They sprinted toward it, dodging grasping hands and flickering lights. Tyler reached it first. He slammed into the glass, and it held. It won't break, he yelled. Emma grabbed a rusted pipe from the ground and swung. The mirror cracked, splintering outward like a spiderweb. The children screamed. The world trembled. Hit it again, Maya cried. With one final swing, the mirror shattered. A blinding light swallowed them. When Maya opened her eyes, she was lying on cold pavement. The smell of damp earth filled her nose. She sat up. They were outside the park. The gate was shut, rusted, silent. Jake coughed, sitting up next to her. Did we? We made it, Emma whispered. Sophia was there too, shaking but alive. But Tyler was gone. They never spoke of it again. Days passed, then weeks. No one remembered Tyler. Not their parents, not their classmates, not even the teachers. It was like he had never existed. But Maya remembered, and every night, when she passed by a mirror, she saw him, trapped, smiling, waiting, and whispering, "Come back and play." They had to go deeper,